Are you for or against the DREAM Act? Explain your answer. Supervisor, would you start?
Well, there's two, the way I understand it, and I'm sorry, I haven't had a chance to read the most recent version, but there's a new version of the DREAM Act that's been introduced, I believe. And I think there are a number of components that are important to that. Immigration is an issue that we have to address. We can't continue to punt and expect a good result to occur. We've got to create a strong guest worker program so that the people we have here can work legally. Most people who come to this country come because they want a better life for their children. And that's where the DREAM Act was born out of. They come here to work. They don't come here to do criminal acts or to harm us. They just want a better future for their children. So getting rid of some of the regulatory burden inside the department that runs immigration, decentralizing some of the offices and getting the decision makers out here on the north and south borders on the West Coast so that we can have more of a streamlined process and address how we handle our immigrants is probably the most important first step to me before we start addressing the DREAM Act.
Thank you, Mr. Tubbs.
Sure. The DREAM Act is a symptom of a larger problem, and that is the immigration issue. And let me address that first before I get to the DREAM Act. When you have, quote unquote, approximately 12 million illegal immigrants in your country, it's not working. When you have states being taken to court by the federal government because they're trying to enforce immigration laws that the federal government won't enforce, there's a problem. When you have sanctuary cities that are thumbing their nose at the law, there's a problem with your immigration policy, and it needs to be changed wholesale. So again, into specific solutions. I was in Kuwait in 2003, if you remember what was happening back then, and I was reading there that there's 800,000 national Kuwaitis and 2 million guest workers in that country. If Kuwait can do it, geez, I think we can too. So the way we satisfy this immigration issue, and I think it's win-win here, and I've only got a minute, it's a lot longer time than that, but I'm going to hit the basics. There is a place in our American economy for the guest worker. I absolutely think we need a guest worker program that allows people from other countries to come in here and fill in the different places of the economy that they help. The economy wins, they win, better life for them, better economy for us. We have a guest worker program that gets rid of all this illegal immigration. However, they are not allowed to tap in to the taxpayer-funded safety net. We can't afford for guest workers to come to our country and be on welfare, unemployment, disability, Social Security. It's got to be separated. Come here, get a job, take care of yourself, great, you're welcome. If not, go home and let your country take care of you. Then you have all these people here legally, and we can't afford the DREAM Act. We can't afford to give our tax dollars to people who that aren't legal, here legally. So no, I am not for it the way it is, but under my program, there would be scholarships and ability for them to be here legally and go to school. Thank you.
Thank you. Congressman?
I support the DREAM Act. Children that come to the United States with their parents did not make the decision to live in the United States. They probably, under the law, would have spent their entire educational program here in the United States, K through 12, and when they get to 12, they are forced out of the education system. These are kids that have become Americans in everything except legal. And to exclude them from the educational process is to waste all that we have done before in educating them. So I support the DREAM Act. We absolutely have to have a comprehensive immigration program, and here's where I find myself in agreement with George W. Bush and Ted Kennedy, who together proposed a comprehensive immigration reform program. Border protection, enforce the border, yes. Deal with those who are here. Those who are here illegally, they need to be in some sort of a penalty and pay their fines and get in the back of the line and get in line to become either legal residence or on the citizenship line. And we do need an ag labor job. We absolutely have to have an ag labor job. As then when it's proposed, supported by unions, supported by agriculture, it has my support.
Thank you. The next question will start with Mr. Tubbs. What is your position on the proposed water legislation, H.R. 1837, San Joaquin Valley Water Reliability Act? Do you think this would be good for Yoho County, especially farmers?
Yeah, and I'll tell you right now, I'm unfamiliar with that bill. If you could describe it to me a little bit, I'll talk about it, but I still work for a living, I don't do this for a living yet. I will know about it as your congressman, but what is the crux of it, and I can talk to it.
Basically, it alters water allocation between Northern California and the Central Valley farmers and changes funding for restoration efforts on the San Joaquin River.
Okay, without knowing too specifically, it kind of gets back to what I'm talking about. There's water rights out there that we need to keep back. We've got to get to that part where we have a supply for everything. We're fighting over these things. We're having tension and problems fighting over the scraps of the water that we don't have enough for. And maybe I'm not talking specifically to what this bill is addressing. But if we increase that supply to where we have enough for everybody, we don't have to have these kind of bills go through to where we're trying to figure out if we should be able to give more water to the south or not. We need water for agriculture. We've got to say yes. We got to take care of our citizens. That's a function of government. When you talk about water, it is a basic unit to life. We have to do things to increase the supply for all three areas. I tell you what, I don't want to see the Delta turn into a salty marsh. I really don't. And I'm willing to give up some micro environments in the foothills in terms of increasing the storage to make sure we save the macro environment and all those other species that we're talking about that sometimes get in the arguments that we're having. So I apologize for not really knowing that bill specifically, and I think I'm going to learn a little bit right now. I do have 2 jobs and campaign and a family, so but as your congressman, I'll definitely be doing one thing, and that's taking care of you and all of that stuff. Thank you.
Supervisor?
H.R. 1837 was born out of complete and utter frustration. The farmers in the San Joaquin are not evil people. They don't want to take away my water, quote unquote, my water, your water, our water. They want a way to survive. They want a way to continue producing food for this country and this state. So to demonize them over 1837 is just wrong, first and foremost. 1837 does reaffirm some Northern California water rights. But the bigger issue that needs to be addressed is the overall water problem. Like I said, H.R. 37 was born out of frustration and fear of economic devastation in that valley. So we need to step back and look at solutions at solving the overall water crisis in the station, which is sites, storage, whether it's conveyance, and addressing the environmental needs that go along with this. We can't demonize them for wanting to actually make something happen. We've gotten to this place in our country where we spend more time talking about things and studying things than we do actually doing something about it. So when we step back and start authorizing projects that address these issues, we won't have knee-jerk legislation that only addresses one part of the water issue, but we can address the total water issue together.
Thank you. Congressman?
H.R. 1837 is the biggest theft of water in California's history. It makes the Owens Valley and Los Angeles' destruction of that valley look minor. 800,000 acre feet of environmental water is ripped out of the Delta and sent specifically to the Westlands Water District. A water district that was the last one formed in the state of California, one that has junior water rights, meaning they are the one with the short straw. That all of the other water districts in the state get their water allotment first, and then what is left goes to the Westlands Water District. That's the law. That's the contract that they signed. Yet they would use the power of the federal government to override state law, substituting federal law, and wiping out all of the environmental protections, literally leading to the destruction of the Delta. Cannot let that happen. Yes, there was a piece of it that affirmed the water rights in the north, the area of origin, and the water rights. But in conjunction with the bill, it could not work. It was simply to buy a vote or two. We have to be diligent if we care at all about the water systems in California. 5 things we need to do: conservation, recycling, storage, underground and surface storage, sites reservoir, and the Shasta Dam are 2 examples. The largest reservoirs in Southern California, the aquifers are not used, recycled. And we need to deal with the Delta. You have to improve the islands in the Delta, the levee that protect the islands in the Delta. Fail to do that, and we will lose control of the water systems, either by flood or levee failure. We need a comprehensive plan, one that I've suggested for more than 20 years.
Thank you. Do you support the Paul Ryan budget and its plans for Medicare, Medicaid, and student aid? Congressman, would you take that one first?
I've spoken to this issue of the Ryan Republican budget numerous times tonight. It is an economic disaster for the state of California and for the people of America. It takes over a 10-year period $800 billion out of Medicare, literally destroying Medicare, of which 60% of the money goes to seniors in nursing homes. If you care about seniors, you cannot support this bill. It also leads to the privatization of Medicare. And the way it is structured, Medicare cannot survive. So if you care to be 65 years of age, 10 years from now, you've got a real serious problem with this bill, because you will not have Medicare available to you. You'll be given a voucher, and you're thrown to the mercy of the insurance companies. And, by the way, they want to simultaneously eliminate the Affordable Health Care Act, which provides all of the guarantees that you and I need to protect ourselves from the profit before people philosophy of the private insurance companies. Such things as no existing condition, eliminating all of that, providing health care for everybody, health insurance for everybody, and making sure that young men and women and children. Let me give you an example. My chief of staff, 20 years ago, had a son who had kidney illnesses, who up until his date of birth was covered by insurance. Born with a kidney problem and immediately dropped and the family went bankrupt. The Affordable Health Care Act prohibits that from ever happening. So these things operate together. And we need to be very, very much aware of what is in store for us if we follow the path of the Ryan budget. And, by the way, as I've already discussed, the issue of tax fairness. If you want millionaires, $1 million a year to have a $394,000 tax reduction, and every single working man and woman in the state and nation to have an increase because their deductions will be reduced, homeowners' deductions and the rest. It is an extraordinarily bad bill.
Mr. Tubbs?
Sure. Now, the way Congressman Garamendi describes the Paul Ryan budget, no, I'm not for it. But I will tell you, there's a few things, and as I've been working through it, again, I have not been able to read the whole bill, but so I cannot comment in detail, but as I've been working through it since it's come out, I like that Paul Ryan has come out and is trying. He's trying to do something to solve this deficit problem. He's working in that direction. He's willing to plant his flag in the sand and say, look, this is what I want to do, and go that way. I absolutely believe in simplifying the tax code. I believe in cutting the spending. I believe in the goal of balancing the budget. But I'll tell you right now, I hope Paul Ryan's the VP choice, because I don't want to talk about the Paul Ryan budget. I want to talk about the Rick Tubbs budget that I'm going to put forward. And that Rick Tubbs budget is going to balance our federal budget in 5 years. 5 years, and let me tell you how. You have started about $3.6 trillion right now. That's about where we're at. You cut that by 3.5% a year, you get $3 trillion. Real cuts, not some, we're cutting our growth rate. And you go through the budget, and I went through some of those cuts, but I've done some Heritage Foundation is where I get these numbers from. $98 billion in overpayments, $47 billion in hiring more expensive labor than we need. There are plenty of cuts in these budgets, and when we're talking about over 5 years cutting $600 billion, we can get there. There's a lot to be cut in our federal government. Now, on the other side, we're about $2.5 trillion in revenues. Now, in a normal economics, over 100 years, it's about a 3% growth rate. Under some of the policies that I'm talking about, I expect it to be much higher than that, but in a simple 4% estimate of growth, you grow 2.5 trillion to 3 trillion in 5 years. That's the kind of numbers that I'm talking about moving forward. And oh, there's some sausage to be made with the cuts and the growth, you bet. And that's what you pay your tax dollars for us Congress people to do, and we'll do that. But let's set some goals, let's set some targets, let's balance this budget so our kids don't have to make up for our irresponsibility.
Thank you. Supervisor?
First off, one of the reasons why we're in the situation that we're in this country is this fear tactic, this partisan, fear-mongering push that one side uses to make you vote for them. Now, is the Ryan budget perfect? Of course it's not. I haven't had the ability, because I also work full-time and I'm a county supervisor and a wife and a mother, to read all of the bills. But I will tell you, this partisan banter is what's driven us to the place that introducing of legislation like this is born out of. We have to be able to work across party lines and come to a solution to address the budget and the spending issues. We can't stand in front of a camera pounding our fists on the table trying to scare me or the future of my child's health care or my grandmother's health care for political gain. This is why we are where we are in this country, and first off, that has to stop. In the last 2 years alone, 106 new major regulations have been passed down on us. That cost was over $46 billion. Are we any better off today with some of those regulatory policies that we were 2 years ago? Or are we worse off because of the money we're spending to address them? We have to look at this in a way where we can reach across party lines and address this issue of national debt and spending.
My family values are that taxes are an investment in our nation and our community. Can you state the ways tax dollars come back to our communities? Supervisor, would you please start?
I heard the last part of the question, but I did you say it's an investment?
This is the statement that was raised. My family values are that taxes are an investment in our nation and community. Can you state the way tax dollars come back to our communities?
The way federal tax dollars come to our communities, when you're standing at the pump your gas and paying that gas tax, those funds should be coming back to our community for road projects, for infrastructure projects that we are paying for flood control, for levee repair, for broadband, for the heavy infrastructure needs that we will need in this state to move our economic progress forward. We pay it into the federal government, and it should come back to us. Infrastructure projects, in my opinion, like Sykes Reservoir, are not earmarks. Those are the investments that we are making in our country, and it should be coming back to our community.
Thank you. Congressman?
Medicare, Social Security, your tax dollars coming back to the community. Medicaid, your tax dollars coming back to the community. The budgets that were put forward and passed out of the House will make it very, very difficult for seniors to have that support, and it will affect this community. The tax dollars came back to the community today. $5 million for a clinic here in the city of Woodland so that health care can be provided. Your tax dollars come back in the form of transportation funds and subsidies for green energy. My legislation will say, bring those tax dollars back to our communities, but make sure that those products, those wind turbines, those solar systems are made in America. Make sure that when BART buys $1.5 billion of trains using our tax money, that those trains are made in America. Your tax dollars do come back to the community. Make sure that we are building the infrastructure that we need, the roads, the streets, the water systems and the levees. Every one of those projects are your tax dollars. Are they coming back to the communities? Some would say they would be, others would say they're not going to be coming back. If we have austerity budgets, it's going to be very difficult to build those systems. We need to have a balanced reform, tax reform that's fair. We need to also make certain that when we balance the budget, we do it in a fair way. Tax cuts and revenue increases. I've discussed this many times tonight. But to let the corporations of America get away without paying taxes and to pay even less than you and I pay as a percentage of our income, something is seriously wrong. We need a total reform of that system so that everybody gets to pay their fair share. And do not put the burden on the middle class and the poor.
Thank you, Mr. Tubbs.
You bet. If I am honored to be your congressman, if you are so moved to vote for me, my duty will be to spend your money wisely. I will be a steward of your money. It's not my money. It's not the government's money. It's your money that you've entrusted to me and 434 other folks there, plus senators and the president, to spend it wisely. And we need to do that. When we have $1 trillion deficit every year, that's not wise. When you talk about how we should spend those dollars, the federal government should have priorities. Number one, the number one reason is to defend our country, national defense. That is a wise use of your dollars. Is there money to save in national defense? I've got nearly a $20 million budget as a commander down at Travis Air Force Base. You bet, I know how to save some money in the military. And I'll be looking forward to making that happen as your congressman. But that's our number one priority. And that's money that makes sure you can sleep in your bed at night safely. Two, we gotta take care of our vets. Taking care of our vets brings that money right home to those vets that have served our country, put their life on the line, and make sure that we're safe at home. That's your second priority. Infrastructure, absolutely, is your next, and they've talked about it well, but we've got to make sure we're getting our infrastructure taken care of wisely and having the money to do it. When you need some infrastructure projects done because they're falling down or getting behind, like that bridge in Minnesota that fell over, and your budget is so taxed because you're already $1 trillion in the hole every year, you don't have the money to bring it back here locally to spend it on what you need. You need people to represent you that are willing to go there and make the tough decisions. Now, we should have been doing this a long time ago, and the longer we wait, the harder it's going to be. But when you talk about austerity budgets, it's not going to be that much. A little bit, over time, we can all do it together. And I see it as a national movement where we, together, as a country, make this happen. And I'll talk about it a little bit more on my thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, in what specific ways would you, what specific ways would you use to improve the local economy and create jobs in our district? Mr. Tubbs, would you take that one first?
Okay, on top of what I've already talked about, regulation, taxation, I think tax rates on income should stay the same. However, on corporate tax for local, let me get back. Small business people that pay income tax on their small business income. You raise the tax on them, now they're in a harder place to grow their business and grow jobs. So we got to take care of that, the regulations. But let me offer something out there that as your congressman I'll do. And that's I'll come to town, I'll come to Woodland. I'm going to ask the small business owners, what's standing in your way from growing your business? What's standing in your way from being successful? I'm going to have an open dialogue with my district. I want you to know that I'm here for you. And if you've got something going on that I can go take care of, as this, I don't want to bring this up too much, but it's a fun job. As a squadron commander, it's my job to take care of my squadron. Well, as an aircraft commander, it's my job to take care of my crew. As your congressman, it's my job to take care of you. And I look forward to that. And one of the ways I do that is by having an open door in my squadron, I will have plenty of different ways to make sure I hear your concerns. What is in the way? How is government standing between you and succeeding? And one of the ways I want to do that, I'm going to call it Constituent Fridays. I understand we have Fridays off as congressmen, which is kind of neat. But anyways, instead of using that time to fly home and all that stuff, which I will do very often, but I want to set up that video link between my offices back here in the district, my office in DC, and I'm going to invite you to come in and talk with me. Now, you may not get to smell my coffee breath, but we'll be eye to eye. We'll be able to talk to each other. What is in the way? And I'm going to start putting those things in the Rig Tubbs budget to make sure that you can succeed.
Thank you. Supervisor?
You know, as a county supervisor, I've learned what has been in the way of job growth. We have a lack of infrastructure in the state and in our counties. We need to improve the infrastructure so that we have businesses that want to come back into the state. We've had a mass exodus of jobs in the state. Covart Industries in Fairfield just moved their operation to Texas. Why did they do that? Did they do that because the regulatory policies and the taxing policies in this state were business friendly? That is one of the best businesses we've had. They started as a small scrap metal shop, a 3-person shop, and grew into an industry. They left the state because of the taxing structure, because of the regulatory burdens, and because of the bureaucrats who continue to overreach in their authority and penalize these businesses. When a business isn't doing something correct, the government should be there to help them get it correct, not financially penalize them the first time they do something wrong. You go in, you work with them, you show them how they're supposed to do it right. Do you come back and check on it? Of course. If they're not doing it right, then you penalize. When the labor department shows up and issues a first-time violation for one employee for over $5,000 in this state, and it's a 2-person shop, what do you think is going to happen to that small business and that entrepreneur? They're not going to be able to do what Covart Industries did and grow to be the job generator that they were in Solano County. We have to look at how we're treating businesses. We can't demonize them. They are the lifeblood of this country. In the last 2 years, we went from being #1 in the world in manufacturing to #2. Now that's unacceptable for me, and I think for most of the residents, not only in Yolo County, but in all of the 3rd. And we have to work to correct that. It's not just forcing you and I to buy something, it's setting the tone that the businesses want to be here.
Thank you. Congressman?
6 specific things to answer your question. What about Woodland? What can we do to improve the job situation and the circumstances in Woodland? First of all, tax policy. I proposed and became law a 100% write-off of all capital equipment that is invested. Last year, 50% write-off. This year, we're going to try to go back to 100% write-off, giving businesses an incentive to invest in Woodland and across America. Secondly, the payroll tax deduction. It was proposed by the Democrats, it went into law. Also a payroll tax deduction for businesses that lasted 1 year. Now we continue to have a payroll tax deduction for employees, bringing more purchasing power back into the community. Flood protection and water. This community is at serious risk from flooding from Cache Creek. We need to be paying attention to that, and as your representative, I am paying attention to it. Call it what you like, we'll do our very best to bring that money back here to provide the flood protection this city needs on the Cache Creek. Secondly, the water systems in this community, we need to put in a new water system in this community. Can it be done? Yes, but it's going to have to be done with federal assistance. So the federal government will have a significant role in bringing that water into this community, and quite possibly, if Davis gets together, it'll also serve the city of Davis. How about making it in America? How many times do you have to talk about it? Our tax money ought to be used on American-made equipment. Period. It's our tax money. Don't use it to buy steel from Japan or China. Use that money to buy American-made products. And finally, you have to protect the seniors. They've earned it. And there are legislation afoot that will destroy the protection for seniors. the privatization of Social Security, and the Medicare. Is it a scare tactic? It's more than a scare tactic. It passed the House of Representatives. It's a very real, it is the blueprint that is now being used to establish the appropriation process.
Tonight, we've heard all of you mention the importance of children and their future. So the question is, do you believe tuition hikes are a valid form to increase state/national revenue and taxes? And then a sub-question is, what is your position on Stafford loans? Congressman, could you please start?
The issue is one I dealt with. I was lieutenant governor, I was a regent, and I was a trustee of the state university system. Time and time again, I watched my colleagues avoid their responsibility of providing for the greatest education system in the entire nation, if not the world. Ducking the issue of, is the state going to pay for it, or are the students going to pay for it? Every single tuition increase that came before the state University Board of Trustees and the regents of the state, the University of California, I voted against it. And to this day, I think it is dead wrong to force this burden off onto the students. It is a bad economic development policy. It keeps students out of school. It does great harm to the overall well-being of this economy, which was built on the research at the university and on the education that was available to every student here in the state of California that could qualify for that. Now, where do we go from here? The Stafford loans are important. There was a bill that passed the House of Representatives with a unanimous vote by the Republicans to double the interest rate on the new Stafford loans, costing those students $1,000 a year the day they graduate. That's wrong, wrong-headed. When we pointed it out, it took exactly 2 days for that policy to reverse. But how do you pay for it? You pay for it, in our view, by getting the oil industry to give up their subsidies. $5 billion a year that they've had for the last century and have become the most successful industry in the world. $1 trillion of profit over the last 10 years. But no, we wouldn't do that. Instead, what passed the House of Representatives without a Democratic vote and by the Republicans in Congress was to take the money away from the poor, away from women on their preventative programs, take it from the children on their inoculations. This is wrong-headed and bad public policy, so that's exactly what was voted out of the House by the Republicans. It is the wrong policy, and we better be aware of what's going on here.
Supervisor.
So many of us went to college using Stanford loans, I being one of them. Working my way through college and having those loans created the opportunity for me to be able to finish college quickly and move on. And I had to pay those loans back. And I think actually just a couple of years ago, my husband and I celebrated paying off the last one. We were both rather excited. But when you invest into something, you have a higher value with it. I support the Stanford loans. I think they need to be available for all of us, for our kids' futures, so that they can attend college. But in regards to the cost of tuition, it's not fair to continue to grow the cost of administration in our UC and our SD systems in the state while increasing the tuition on the students. They're allowing more out-of-state and out-of-country students into the system because they pay a higher tuition. That makes it less opportunities for those of us that live here in the state to send our children there. We have to look at this situation like we're looking at the national debt. Are we spending more than the value we're getting out of it? Does the administrative costs and the oversight costs need to be looked at and brought down in a way to address the tuition costs at the same time? You can't continue to rise those costs and then expect that the tuition situation is going to follow it very shortly. There is a role for the state here, and there's a role for some small tuition increases and some personal responsibility in that. We have a fabulous education system in the state, and I think the most important component of that system is that your and mine and our future generations are able to attend college in the state where we were born and raised.
Thank you. Mr. Dutz?
You bet. I'm another one of those that benefited from federal money to get through college, whether it was my military scholarship or Pell Grants. and some loans that we ended up paying off as well. And you bet, that's a definite, excellent investment of your tax dollars into our young adults to be much better producers in society. And I do not agree with doubling the interest rate, so I'm glad that got fixed. Problem is we're going forward here, and we're talking about it. Congressman Garamendi, first thing, that on the backs of the poor, they try to pay for this. Well, when I was running last time against his friend George Miller, he pushed through a $27 billion Save the Teachers bill that didn't save a lot of teachers, that cut food stamps. I mean, if we're gonna demonize each other every time we try to cut and be responsible with money, we're never gonna get it done. You're talking about oil subsidies. In Harry Reid, Senator Harry Reid's state of Nevada, gold and silver don't pay anything on the money they pull out of your federal lands. Zero. Why aren't we talking about increasing some subsidies on a 0% for gold and silver? If you want more money out of oil, why don't we open up some more national lands and let them drill? Let them pull the oil out of it, and then we get more revenue. Absolutely. There are ways to do this smartly. Education is a ping pong ball that we play with because it tugs on our heartstrings, but it gets back to spending your dollars wisely. I'll tell you, big picture, I see your tax dollars as an investment into our young adults as a wise spend of your money. But we have to be able to afford it. If we're borrowing $1 trillion to make it happen, it's not going to work out for us in the long run. There's not going to be jobs there, or the money they make isn't going to be hardly worth anything because of all the borrowing, the quantitative easing, and the inflation that we're facing in the future because of this. We've got to get our house in order. We've got to stop yelling at each other every time we try to do something wisely with money and work together to get it done. Thank you. Hopefully education can help us do that.
Thank you. This will be the last question. Why would privatizing Social Security or opting out of the program be a bad thing? Supervisor, would you start, please?
It was
Why would privatizing Social Security or opting out of that program be a bad thing?
Well, I'm not necessarily convinced that an opt-out option would be a bad thing, or that privatizing part of it in that option would be a bad thing. Private industry in this country have made us what we are today. They're not bad. Do we have to regulate industries to make sure they follow the rules in some cases? Absolutely. But the first step forward in looking at some private options is not a bad thing. We have to look at anything we can to address the issue and make sure that Medicare is there for our seniors and solve it for future generations. There's some simple math here. We had a larger population working than we do now, and for several 10-year groups to come. And when we have less people working and creating the revenue that feeds this system, we don't have enough revenue to draw off of. That's not demonizing Medicare. That's not telling seniors we want to hurt them. That's taking control of the situation and addressing it and not waiting for it to get worse in 10 years. So I don't oppose looking at the private sector for help in this arena, or having as many options as possible so that our seniors can receive the best care.
Thank you. Congressman?
In 1933, FDR and Congress established Social Security as a way for seniors to have an income when they retire. It has been since that time one of the most important social programs this nation has ever put in place. It has taken seniors out of poverty and has given them an opportunity to have some dignity in their retirement years. There are those who would take that program and privatize it in whole or in part. This has been the Republican mantra for the last 20 years. Giving that money to Wall Street. Now, if you remember what happened in 2007 and 2008, you might think a little more carefully about the foundation for every person's retirement in this nation. It has to be there. You cannot count on the day you retire and the years thereafter that the money will be there if you give it to Wall Street. You only need to look at the last 5 years. So it's the bedrock foundation. Do not privatize it. Yes, we're going to have to make changes, as we have 3 times in the last 40 years. And we will make those changes. One of the changes that's possible is what we have done time after time, and that is to increase the top level. $106,000, you can increase that up, and you can make this thing whole. Now, Medicare is similarly placed. There are those that would take Medicare and literally privatize it and give you a voucher that on this, the day you get it, is insufficient, and every year thereafter falls below the inflation rate in healthcare. Medicare is carried along by the general inflation in healthcare, and in fact is more efficient than the private healthcare system. A long discussion needs to be had about understanding the way in which Medicare and Social Security works. And we need to understand how important this is to all of us.
Thank you. Mr. Tubbs.
You bet. Let me start off by saying that I have a 99-year-old grandma. Bless her soul, she lives on Social Security. Medicare is taking care of her. And I want to make sure that your 99-year-old grandmas, and hopefully my 99-year-old mother someday, is taken care of. So whatever solutions that I'll be working on to solve this problem will be with that in mind. When you talk about privatizing Social Security, Medicare, those entitlements, to try to save some money, let me tell you another story. I worked for United Airlines, and I had a wonderful pension waiting for me, a good one. That's one of the reasons why you become an airline pilot, because of that pension that's going to take care of you. You're going to live the high life doing nothing. When that company went into bankruptcy, that was the first thing they took from me, was my pension. And now I'm high and dry. Instead of getting $10,000 a month, somewhere in there, depending upon what was going to happen, I'm going to get about $88 on my PBGC. When the company started negotiating on our new contract, I told my union boss, her name was Wendy Morse at the time, do not give me another pension. Let me keep my money myself, because I don't trust the company to protect my pension, because they'll take it in a heartbeat. If we don't get our government house in order, if we don't spend your money wisely, Social Security, Medicare will go the way of the United Pension. Now there's a scare tactic for you. We can't let that happen. And if we're borrowing $1 trillion a year, how are we going to pay for these programs? I won't let that happen. It'll be what I will work on as your congressman to make sure we can afford Social Security, afford Medicare. We can look at options, but they've got to be in the context of my 99-year-old grandma and making sure she's taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go forward with the closing remarks. We'll go back to our original order that was selected by the lots, which would mean Supervisor Vann, you will be starting. Mr. Tubbs, your second, and Congressman last.
Well, thank you so much.
How much time? How much time?
Oh, 3 minutes.
Sorry. 3 minutes.
Thank you all so much for joining us this evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this. You know, as a Colusa County Supervisor and under my leadership, we didn't tax and spend our way into job growth. We got the government out of the way. We reduced regulatory burdens. We refused to increase taxes, which resulted in my county being one of the only counties in this state that has had net positive job growth from 2007 till today. It's not the government's role to create jobs. It's the government's role to set the tone for the private sector to create these jobs. It's time for us to remove these regulatory barriers that have led this country to being number 2 in manufacturing and no longer number 1 in the world. I was elected by my county supervisor peers in the state from the rural counties to serve them as their leader. 31 counties, including Yolo County, elected me to represent them at the state and the federal level. I have the ability to reach across party lines and build coalitions to get things done, not just to talk about them. Being born and raised in this new 3rd Congressional District, I have an inherent love for this area, for all 8 counties. I struggle with all the same issues that all of us struggle with. My job and my business has had a 50% decline. The value of my house has decreased dramatically over the past 5 years. And I paid almost $5 a gallon for gas today. Our communities are struggling. And the last 4 years, we've produced more Solyndras than we have jobs. I will fight to protect agriculture in this district, to ensure an ample supply of water, to protect and enhance national security. I will fight to protect Beal and Travis and all of those amazing men and women who serve us. But above all, I will be your representative, a representative who's had over 5 generations in this area. I will be your representative that wants nothing more than a better future for us and for generations to come. And I thank you for listening to us all this evening.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tubbs, 3 minutes.
Again, thank you so much for your attention tonight, coming out and listening to us, giving us a chance to earn your vote. And you're looking at a couple of people to my left and right that are serving you in their capacities, public servants. I did it in the military. And really, I respect that moving forward. You have 3 people up here asking for your vote that are trying to do the right thing for you. Now, I alluded to a little earlier, this national movement I want to see. I want you to understand a little bit about my history, to understand the passion I have behind what I'm trying to do. You see, I grew up in a little one-stop sign town, North Lake, Wisconsin, with my mother and my sister, and we were raised on welfare. I was a happy kid, it didn't matter to me, but that's where I started. Went into the military, served my country, have been to a couple of wars, and have not regretted one moment putting that uniform on and my life on the line for you, the Americans. I've joined an airline, I've become a union member. I have a look at this economy and our problems from all different sides. And in the military, I am about solving problems. I really don't care what party you're in. When we have a staff meeting in my squadron, it isn't line up on this side for the Democrats, line up on that side. As a matter of fact, my number 2 guy is a very much liberal Democrat, and we get along great because we solve problems together. This national movement that I'm talking about, we're going to have to make some tough decisions to keep that American dream that I have lived alive for my kids and grandkids, for your kids, your grandkids. That American dream of living a life of coming from something below where you're at and doing better and passing it on, letting your kids do better than you. That's the American dream that I'm talking about. And what I see, the last great generation we had was the World War II great generation that sacrificed to win that war so that we could experience and enjoy that American dream. Well, it's our turn now, ladies and gentlemen. It's our turn now. And unfortunately, we don't have to fight a war. All we have to do is give up some of our reliance on this federal government so we can balance this budget. And what we need to do is bring forward something that we all do together, a national movement. We wear it as a badge of pride. What did you give up to make sure that American dream was there for your kids and grandkids? And I'm not talking about everything. I don't want to see a United Airlines thing happen to you. But if we do it now, if we work on it now and not wait again, kick the can down the road like so many are doing, we need to elect people who are willing to work on it and get it done. And I'm that. Thank you again so much. God bless you and God bless America.
Thank you. Congressman.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. These forums are always important, and they do illuminate the policies that all of us must deal with. 4 things. Jobs. There are 4 things that we must do year after year if we're going to create jobs. First of all, you have to have the best education system in the world. We don't. We need to invest in education, the most fundamental investment that any society will ever make. I remember those kids in Ethiopia walking 10 miles, whatever it took to get an education. Now, research. The greatest research institutions in the world are in this state. One is just to the south of here, UC Davis. You cannot have the federal government pull back the research, which is exactly what's happening today in energy, in healthcare, in medical services, as well as in agricultural research. Those are where the new jobs and new technologies come from. Secondly, you need to have infrastructure. We've talked a lot about that. This city needs infrastructure, flood, water, highways, and the like. We need to put those things in place. Fourth, we need to make it in America. We can rebuild the manufacturing sector. It's not the regulations that did it. It is, in fact, government policy that encouraged the offshoring of jobs, including free trade acts. We've got to be aware of the problems that occur when we have policies in place that reward the offshoring of jobs. We can turn those around, and we have. Now, those are the four things: education, research, infrastructure, and manufacturing. That's where you create the long-term jobs as well as the short-term jobs. We have to protect Social Security. It is the bedrock foundation. All of the other programs can be built on top of that, but do not take that away. And Medicare is fundamental. I remember very well, as a young kid, going to the county hospital when there was no Medicare. And I know what it is today. It's fundamental. And it can change, and it will change, but don't privatize it, don't give it a voucher, because that will destroy it. Deficit? Absolutely, we have to deal with the deficit. That's why I voted for $4 trillion reduction in the deficit in a balanced way. Get those tax money back from the corporations that are skipping out on their taxes. Make sure that it's fair. Those at the top end have had a break for the last decade. They need to be paying their fair share. Make sure you don't put the burden on the middle class and the poor. And finally, locally, water and flood projects, which are crucial to all that we do here. Our communities depend upon it. Our agriculture depends upon it. And be careful. Water wars are common, and water theft has been the history of California. You better have somebody that understands all of these things, or else we'll lose them. I've had the great pleasure and joy of being in public policy for years. And it has been a wonderful opportunity to serve constituents all across this state. I hope to continue in this work because there's much to be done. To be able to apply my knowledge and experience over this period of time has been a great honor and much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the